Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Saturday morning. Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, I think get a massive commitment in the 2026 class. Four-star cornerback Caden Harris flipping his commitment from Vanderbilt to Georgia. This kid freaking rocks. And I'll say this with all due respect to Vanderbilt. When Caden Harris committed to Vanderbilt in late April and you start diving into a little bit of the junior year film, you start diving into the athletic profile, it was really hard for me to see him sticking with Vanderbilt as these SEC teams really started to push for Caden Harris. And that's exactly what you saw Kirby Smart in this Georgia Bulldogs program do. This kid fits exactly the prototype that Kirby Smart and Georgia wanted that quarterback room. He's long, he's fast, and he has ball skills. I mean, he kind of checks all the boxes you're looking for these cornerbacks at the high school ranks, not to mention high football IQ and an extremely smooth mover too. Look, it's one thing to be really big and be able to run on the straight line. When you're playing that cornerback position, the change of direction has to be elite. You have to be able to mirror wide receivers in man coverage. Caden Harris, that might be the best part of his game. Like how smooth of a mover and how loose those hips are. This kid checks all the boxes. Really, the only thing you want to see from him as he gets to Athens, and I got no doubt this is going to take place, probably just got to put on a little bit more weight. The frame is very slender. You know, he's listed at 160. I'd be surprised if he's anything over 160. As he continues to fill out that frame, this kid has legitimate all-conference potential at the cornerback position for Georgia. And again, you're getting a guy that fits what the athletic profile Kirby Smart wants in that room. Really long. He's only listed at 6 feet tall, man. He's got to be pushing 33-inch arms. I mean, the length on this kid seems massive. Really big-time commitment. Want to talk a little bit more about Caden Harris because I think this kid is going to be a ball player. And I want to talk about where Georgia's going on the recruiting trail. Before we get into it, as always, the Georgia fans, we're really just, I think, starting to get rolling for Kirby Smart and Georgia filling out this 2026 cycle. And what I think they've done is they've filled out the base of their class, and now they're going to start turning it up for some of the bigger names on their board. Going to be really fun breaking down the commitments over the next couple of weeks. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And let's start with this. The secondary class that Georgia is bringing in 2026, as we sit right now in the middle of June, is incredible. I mean, it's a bunch of really big guys who can run really fast and guys that are already really good football players at the high school ranks, both at the safety position and at the cornerback position. Now, I think Caden Harris kind of fills that in. And like, you look at Caden Harris and Justice Fitzpatrick, and you're saying both of these guys not only have the ideal athletic profile you're looking for, they're also really polished and good football players at the high school ranks. I look at both Caden Harris and Fitzpatrick and say, look, you have a feeling that they're going to hit. They're going to be really solid for Georgia, but at the same time, I think they give you that access to some legitimate all-conference upside too. That's what you're looking for. You know, you talk about high floor, high ceiling players, and both Caden Harris and Justice Fitzpatrick, I feel like, fit that mold for Georgia. Where does Georgia go on the recruiting trail from here? I think it's from, those top targets. And you're getting a few of them on campus this weekend. Let's start with what I think is probably the biggest target for Georgia on their boards remaining, outside of guys like Jerry Curtis. It's probably Tyler Atinson. This just makes too much sense, right? When you see these 5-star linebackers from Georgia, Kirby Smart just ain't letting these kids out of the state, especially when it comes to Tyler Atkinson, who fits what Georgia wants in this off-ball linebacker room. Like, not only is this kid, a tackle machine, had like 150 tackles his junior year, flies around the football field, checks all the athletic profile boxes that you want. He's also an extremely versatile front seven weapon. And that's how Georgia treats their linebackers. Like, we ain't just looking for off-ball linebackers. We're looking for guys that can be weapons in the front seven, coming off the edge as pass rushers, blitzing the A and B gap. Him and Xavier Griffin are two guys that, they're really good off-ball linebackers, but at the same time, they are these front seven chess pieces that you can use in all sorts of ways to really dominate in the front seven. And that's what Georgia looks for at their linebacker position. I think Tyler Atkinson fits exactly how Georgia wants to use him. You've seen some other programs generate some buzz, right? Clemson's generated some buzz at times. You've seen Oregon generate some buzz at times. The underlying expectation here is that Kirby Smart and Georgia are outworking everybody for Tyler Atkinson. I'd be stunned if Tyler Atkinson does not wind up a Georgia Bulldog at the end of this process. And I think he's a perfect fit for what Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart want to do with their off-ball linebackers. Here's another name that I think is very much worth monitoring, and that's Derrick Cooper. Look, I mean, outside of Savion Hyder, I think Derrick Cooper's probably the second best running back in this class, and I think it's turning into probably a little bit of a Georgia Miami battle. And I think Georgia's done a really good job with Derrick Cooper. He's back on campus this weekend. Can Georgia build some momentum with Derrick Cooper? I think the longer this process plays out, the better Georgia fans feel about this. I think, when you started this process in early January, looking at where Derrick Cooper could end up, the first idea was Miami, right? The hometown school recruiting him really hard. The longer this one goes, the better I like Georgia's chances. Another guy that I think is worth mentioning, and another what sounds to be Georgia-Miami battle, is Kola Jay. Now, you've seen Georgia add a couple of bodies on the inside of the offensive line. This kid, I think, would be one of the best options in the country. And very similar to a guy like Caden Harris, Kola Jay is such a high floor player. I look at Kola Jay and say, wherever he goes across the country, it's hard for me to not see a multi-year starter in the middle of that offensive line. This is a guy that's extremely polished at the high school ranks, coming from IMG Academy. And quite frankly, he's an ass kicker. He's a guy that is extremely imposing along the line of scrimmage, really good climbing to the second level, really good getting out in space, really good football player. And I would say this, you want these kind of guys out of the high school ranks, guys that are going to be multi-year starters for you. It's hard. It's hard. And I think one of the things that has really benefited Georgia is they do a really good job recruiting these guys at the high school ranks so they don't have to go and try to mess around in the transfer portal for plug-and-play guys on the offensive line because, look, they ain't that many good ones. So if you want to have a good offensive line, you better be recruiting these guys out of the high school ranks. And Kola Jay, he's that kind of guy. And then the last guy I'll talk about who's going to be on campus, Van Spadford. When he committed to Georgia, I thought this was a massive get. I continue to feel that way. He's obviously taken his visits. He's obviously, looking around kind of similar like Brady Marchese was. And can Georgia get him on campus and shut this one down and kind of lock him in the 2026 cycle? If Georgia can do that over the weekend, you're feeling really good about where Georgia sits. And there's a legitimate pathway to Georgia finishing as the number one class in the country. Got a couple of names that are kind of on the top of the board. We'll see if Georgia can get it done. Really good spot right now. And I'll say this, they're recruiting the positions that has made Georgia so dominant for the last 5 years. They're going to continue to do that. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.